Hey Grinder School, this is CodeRed Rules, and today for this Grinder School short, I'm going to talk to you about a very specific scenario. What happens when you've got a Maniac on your right and you're in the blinds? So let's go ahead and build this up a little bit more. You've been fortunate enough to have a Maniac on your right. You know, you guys are full stacked, and if you're in 6 max, 5 out of 6 times you have position on him. It's just this one time where, you're in a small blind, your opponent's in the button, he raises it up, and he's raising up every single button, and, what do you do? And in full ring game, it's 8 out of 9 times you have position on him. It's just this one time where he has position on you. And I believe in the two different games, the strategy is similar, but in the full ring game, you need to, it's easier for you to err on the side of caution when you're the one out of position. In 6 max, it's very important, or the blind play itself is very important because it happens so often. The 1 out of 6 times is much greater than the 1 out of 9, and compared to the full ring. But does that mean that you need to be sitting there and playing every single hand that is going to beat his range? Because I feel like if you do that, and if you're not skilled if you're not very skilled at playing out of position versus someone with a wide range, I believe it's almost better for you to err on the side of caution. Now, what kind of hand range should you be having? Well, let's say first off your opponent is raising up. Let's say your opponent is raising up 80% of buttons. All right. I guess a hand range that's just kind of out there, right? He's got pretty much everything he's wanting to play, he's going to be playing. He's going to be raising. So what should you be doing? What should you be playing against that hand range of everything? Well, we can go ahead and plug in 80% here. So this is what he's playing. Now, should we be playing anything close to 80% of our hands? You know what I mean? Okay, against top 80% of hands, top 50% should have an equity advantage against him, even though this is not exactly how we would do the math in terms of that scenario. So does this mean we should be playing like all these different hands, right? No, that's definitely not the case. The first hand range that I would go with, obviously, you're playing any pair and any Broadway. All right, those would be the two cases scenarios. And I think if you guys even want to fold a hand like Jack 10 offsuit, you can go ahead and fold that hand, and then exchange it with Ace 9 suited instead. All right. In order to, before adding hands in the offsuit, make sure you add them in the suited as well. And by playing, most of the time, guys, I mean calling. If you get someone who's raising 80% of the hands, and if he's calling a lot of 3-bets, by all means, 3-bet him with aces, kings, queens, jacks, tens, ace king, and ace queen, and perhaps even ace jack, but that gets into a very tricky scenario once we start doing that. So we're 3-betting with these hands up here. So what hands should we be adding to our calling range? Now, as we do not want to be bluffing this guy ever. All right, there are just some opponents, all right, where it's beneficial for you to not have in your bluffing range, and all right, to not be bluffing with, and so you should never really have a bluffing hand range. And so that's why, like, when I see people like re-raising really fishy players as a bluff, it's very pointless. All right. And it's very pointless because your opponent's not folding, and your opponent's going to be losing a lot of money to you against your value range. So only re-raise them for value. All right, you can make so much money if you at the small stakes, and that includes to like 50L if you table select well. If you're a U.S. player, 15L is actually hard tables to come by, and those are probably very similar to almost 100L on a place like PokerStars. But if you're a European player and you have a lot of table selection, 50L, you could still, in my opinion, just go for value for the most part. Before you improve, though, you have to work on bluffing. But even if you were to work on bluffing, you're not going to be bluffing these fishy players. All right, your entire intent is to just pwn them for value every single time. And so we're out of position. This is not the in position hand range. If we're in position, we can certainly be calling a few more hands. But given we're out of position, I actually like the way this hand range looks quite a bit. Let's say we're in the small blind. I wouldn't like to call any more suited connectors. Maybe, I don't know, ace-side offsuits looks okay, but I feel like it just doesn't play very well. Same thing with the ace-8 suited. Once we start getting down there to the suited aces and stuff, we become to the point where it's going to be very hard for us to play and get value when we hit a marginal hand when we have one. So I actually like this hand range against somebody who's raising up a lot of buttons. Yeah, it's only like what 13% of hands that we're calling. We're gonna be playing a little bit more than that because we're gonna be raising some for value. But keep in mind we're out of position. We're playing against an aggressive player who likes to bet a lot, and we're playing against somebody who has the initiative already. So it's going to be very hard for us to really play against that. We're going to be playing basically fit or fold post flop against this guy, and that's going to be the basic strategy against anybody who's playing a ton of hands, not trying to bluff him. And the difference between six max and full ring, in full ring, you're almost better off even folding like some of these weaker hands, like ace or queen 10, ace 9 suited, and just because you're able to live in the next day. And if you were just to wait one hand, you're going to have position on him again. And that's essentially what your goal is, to play as many hands as you possibly can against this weak opponent when you have position on him, not trying to play hands when you're out of position. And yeah, sometimes you're gonna have to play out of position against him when you have a hand to play, but it's not something that I would look forward to, or something that I would generally try to play. And now if you're playing, let's say you're playing 10 tables, all right, you're massive multi-tabling here, and you do have this one fishy player, then yeah, we're going to tighten up even a little bit more when you're out of position. So maybe even get rid of a hand like King 10 offsuit. You know what I mean? Because what happens is calling the marginal hand out of position against a fishy player might be plus EV. It probably is going to be plus EV. But it might be so marginally plus EV that by playing that hand, you're giving up on other more plus EV spots on other tables. Like if you're playing this one hand and that forces you to fold out a couple blind steals on these other tables that you're playing, because you're playing this marginal hand and you're thinking so much about it. And honestly, when you're playing your marginal hands, you need to be thinking about those more than the ones that you're in position or more you're blind stealing with, because you want to make sure these hands are profitable. And so you might be giving up some plus EV spots on their tables. And so therefore, playing a marginal hand like this while you're playing a lot of hands, although it might be plus EV, it might not be as plus EV as, say, folding it and playing it on some of the other hands as well, the other tables. And as you improve, I mean, if you're new to multi-tabling, then that's something that you would look forward to do. After a while, hopefully, you've got to the point where you don't longer have to fold these plus AV spots, and you're able to turn them almost into a mindlessly plus AV, where you can sit there and be on autopilot and be able to play them correctly, which is something that by the time you get up to like 100 and 200 NL, a lot of the good regs, 99% of the time, are going to be on autopilot with what they do. All right. So hopefully I have cleared up how you guys should be playing against Maniac players who've raised on the button. All right, and we're out of position. How to play against those hands. And I guess this applies to when we're in the big blind versus a button raise. Although in that case scenario, we're out of position 2 out of 6 times in a 6-max game and 2 out of 9 times in a full ring game. So it becomes a lot. If our opponent is 1 extra to the right, so let's say he's 2 seats over, then it's a lot more important for us to be able to play correctly out of position, just because it's going to happen more often against that opponent. And honestly, I mean, you know what I mean? That's a good seat for you. So don't pass up that seat because you're afraid to play out of position against this guy one time. Okay. So anyway, this has been CodeRed Rules. Thanks for listening. Let me know if you have any questions, and see you later.